Hello everybody and welcome to History Bite number 28, dated September 2nd, 2020. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History Bite is entitled The Intolerable Acts of 1774, or in Great Britain, they were known as the Coercive Acts. In any case, these were a series of laws enacted by the British Parliament in 1774 with the intention of punishing the colony of Massachusetts for the recent Boston Tea Party of 1773. Okay? Although the laws had the intention of punishing Massachusetts, the effects were felt throughout the American colonies. Indeed, colonial opposition to them was so strong that they were one of the leading catalysts for the American Revolutionary War breaking out in April of 1775. So let's review them. There were 5 intolerable acts: the Boston Port Act, the Massachusetts Government Act, the Massachusetts Justice Act, the Quartering Act, and the Quebec Act. We'll go through each one and explain exactly what each entailed. First, the Boston Port Act. This law effectively closed the port of Boston to any and all shipping, regardless of the purpose, until the colony made restitution for the destroyed tea in the Boston Tea Party. As the economy of Boston and Massachusetts in general was very dependent upon shipping, this had a very unpleasant economic effect for the region. Sympathetic colonies as far south as South Carolina sent supplies to their brethren in Massachusetts, knowing that this wasn't an isolated thing, and that what has happened in Massachusetts, or rather what had happened in Massachusetts, could easily happen to any one of them. And so there was a lot of sympathy to the colonists in Massachusetts from their fellow colonies. All right? Next we have the Massachusetts Government Act. This law effectively upended the Massachusetts Colonial Charter of 1691 and eliminated virtually all democratic government in the colony of Massachusetts. All power, essentially, was consolidated in the hands of either the governor or the crown. Sometimes that power overlapped, but in any case, virtually all power from the people was removed. It was not popular, and certainly antagonized the people of Massachusetts a great deal, as if they already weren't pissed off enough. Take away their self-government, and now you've really got a problem. The third act was the Massachusetts Justice Act. That law had the effect of allowing certain officials to be tried in England or other British colonies if they had committed certain crimes and felt they could not receive a fair trial in Massachusetts. The motivations behind this law are very dubious because what led Parliament to enact it was the Boston Massacre trials back in 1770. And the irony here is that the British soldiers and officer in the Boston Massacre trials certainly received a fair trial. Okay, so it's kind of strange why Parliament enacted this law, but certainly, like the other two before mentioned, this was viewed by colonists as more okie doke from England, as it seemed as if certain royal officials or other officials in general could commit certain crimes and get away with it because they wouldn't have to stand trial in the jurisdiction where it was committed, in this case Massachusetts. For that reason, some people dubbed it the Murder Act. Okay? It wasn't any more popular than the Massachusetts Government Act or the Boston Port Act. The fourth law was the Quartering Act. This law mandated that colonial governors quarter British soldiers in private homes should there be no room anywhere else, for them to lodge. And it didn't just end there. In addition to quartering the soldiers in homes if necessary, the residents would have to provide these soldiers with food and drink, okay, at their own expense, mind you. Okay, it's not like they were given a stipend or anything, by the Crown and Parliament. So, needless to say, the Quartering Act certainly drew outrage throughout all the American colonies, because unlike the first three acts, which were specifically targeting Massachusetts, the Quartering Act was applicable to all 13 colonies, all right? And nobody was happy about it. No one whatsoever, all right? It might have been one thing if, the people were compensated for having to house soldiers in their private homes, but that was not the case, and people had to provide for these soldiers at their own expense. Totally unjustifiable, in my opinion, all right? And the fifth and final act was the Quebec Act. And technically, although this wasn't a part of the Intolerable Acts, it was passed virtually at the same time, and because it pissed the colonists off in its own right, it was often grouped with the previous four. The Quebec Act extended the boundaries of the Quebec colony in Canada all the way down to the Ohio Valley, all right, thus inhibiting the westward expansion of several colonies. If that wasn't bad enough to them, to many colonists it also seemed like the Crown was imposing Catholicism upon them, because the Quebec colony was overwhelmingly Roman Catholic, and in the minds of the colonists, extending the boundaries of that Catholic colony all the way down to the Protestant American colonies, they rationed that to be forcing Catholicism upon them. Yeah, they lost me with this one. All right, that's totally illogical, and that certainly was not the case. But, whatever. We can all form in our own minds what we want to believe.